And we are back, and I have a terrible feeling that one of our members has frozen. There it is, because that was the exact face she was pulling before we left, before we started even, and she dropped straight out there. So that has definitely proven that there was a slight issue with her Wi-Fi. I'm sure she should be back. That would be all we get. What a moment that would be otherwise. But hello, welcome. 16 of you there already. Crikey, you must have been queuing up. Sorry, we're a little bit late, but it is time to begin. And shall we begin with a happy International Women's Day? So as you can see, what we've tried to do here is to cultivate an entirely women's panel. Now the problem is that we don't have any women hosts as yet, so one of us had to take over it, and it turns out that I do the Wednesdays, so that's how it is really. So I'm here, but we've got a lovely panel, and look who we've got here. We've got Helen again. She's back. Hi Helen, how are you doing over there? We have Sarah down at the bottom there. Thanks for coming back there. And of course, all the way back from over the pond, we have got Beth as well. And just sitting backstage and getting ready to come back again. Hopefully not with her finger on her chin anymore. There she is. She's back again. We've got Grace back. We haven't had for a while. So hi, Grace. How are you?
Hello. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Excellent. Yes, very good indeed. So there we go. We've got our panel. We know what we're doing. Today is a day of delight because we finally get to start talking a little bit about the differences between this season, last season, and whether or not we are now ready for the Champions League. So there are some people that think that we are, some people that think that we're not. So what I wanted to kick off with, and this is going to be awesome because we've done all this hard work getting, as I say, a full panel. We've got loads of people, and I'm now going to cover them up entirely so that nobody can see anybody, which will be a real shame. It'd be great that you can't see me, but for these four, not so good. But there we go. Here we are. This is the table as it stands currently here in the WSL. And as you can see, obviously, 14 games played by most of us. It's great for us, top of the table. We've won 11, drawn 2, lost 1, 38 goals scored, 8 goals conceded, a goal difference of 30 and 35 points, 3 points clear of City, and indeed can only be caught by Chelsea. But what we thought would be a nice idea would be to have a little look at last season after 14 games. Now, obviously, it's never quite going to work out as you would have wanted it to, but this is the league table after 14 games last season. And as you can see, there is an absolute chasm of a difference as to how we as a club have performed after 14 games. Only 7 games won, 4 games drawn, that big run of 4 games, that really, a couple of games that killed us, and 3 games lost. Scored 28, which was still quite good, but conceded 15. Goal difference 13 and 25 points. So it's quite clear there's a massive difference. A better goal difference, better goals scored. Going to ask around, what's your thoughts? What's different about this Manchester United team this year that has helped us to get to this level? Because when I was writing that up, I didn't expect it to be quite so big, but a 10-point difference for us. And more importantly, had we been as this good last season, after 14 games, we would be 3 points clear of Chelsea. We'd have had the best goal difference with 38 scored. Only Chelsea would have conceded less than us. It would have been the same as Arsenal, but our goal difference was still better. So, Helen, what's your thoughts?
I don't think you can put it down to one thing, of course. It's another year the players have been playing together, learning how they are on the pitch, positioning, what they're going to do, those relationships. Obviously brought in new signings that have improved the team, the defence, Maya Letitia, of course. Maybe just, although some people I know are against it, just having a set team and using the same 11 more without injuries so much this season as well.
Thank you. I was in the middle there having a little coughing fit, and you stopped right in the middle of it. So thanks for that as we pull ourselves down. But awesome. Absolutely. Sarah, what would you say are the big changes, the big things that have happened that have made us so much better this season than last season?
Well, I agree that it's not as clear cut as it's just been. We've obviously made some very good signings. We're in a really good position in terms of we obviously have the regular starters, but there's so much competition in the squad. And I just think were we to suddenly have an injury crisis, there would be plenty of players who could step in. I mean, even recently when Toon got the red card and it looked like she would be banned for 3 games, that was a worry. But I personally didn't feel too worried knowing that, somebody like Vilda could come in and be quite capable filling in that role. So I think that's a big difference. And I think that has affected the mentality of the squad as well. Competition has obviously been really good for, making players more determined to cement that place in the starting lineup. So I think that's probably been a big reason as well.
Absolutely. Sarah's just thrown out a point here. Here we go. Can we just look at the downfall of Spurs, third last season, now looking doomed? And absolutely we can look at that. I mean, why not? We're here for all of this sort of stuff. So there we go. Here they currently are, sat happily in 10th with just 9 points. And yes, last season after 14 games, third, 27 points. But there's a few like that. Aston Villa are 9th last year, but look at them now, up into 5th. So, a fair few jumps, and actually it's a really cool thing. I'm going to send this over to Connor, and hopefully he can whack it out on the Twitter so you guys can have a proper little look at it and laugh and decide, and maybe you'll have as much fun as I did. I said to the girls, I've spent a whole hour doing all of that, and it's been great fun. Absolutely loved it. I'm sure I'll find lots of little nuggets that help me go to sleep tonight. Beth, what have you seen? What are you seeing on the pitch? What are you seeing with the girls? What is it that has made us so much better this season than we were last season?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with everybody. It's not just really one thing. It's off the pitch. They seem to have awesome repertoire with people, with each other. The coaching staff is there for a whole nother year to be able to put in their philosophy, which is always good. And like everybody said, the signings that have come in have really helped the team and improved. So it's definitely a little bit of everything.
Absolutely. And Grace Joseph makes quite a good point here. Number one thing for me, we're injury free, and the upgrade on the signings. The injuries is quite a big thing, isn't it? Because we did have quite a few that were injured last year. We've kept it down really to sort of 2 or 3 this year, touch wood, currently. What's your thoughts, Grace, on how we've managed to change from last season to this?
I think it's definitely like you look at the goal difference for one, we're not not that we ever were like a one-band team. I think now more so than ever, we're not just relying on Russo to get the goals. We're not just relying on Toon to get the assists. We've got Golden scoring a lot. Rachel Williams coming off the bench as well, scoring for us in crucial games as well when we need to pick up those points. And I think, looking at the bench, you've got Leon, you've got Garcia as well, sometimes coming off the bench, Nikita Paris as well, Martha Thomas. We've got a really good strength and depth in that attacking area as well. And I think that's a big thing for me, was looking at that, the goal difference and the goals for especially.
There we go. Absolutely. So I want to just split it briefly, because we've spoken a little bit about goal difference there. And for me, that's the biggest thing. The fact that we've managed to change from a goal difference of, 16 or 17? Let's double check that again, just so I'm working out. So a goal difference of 13, where we conceded 15, obviously, before, knocking it down now to 30, where we've only conceded 8. Again, you look at that and you look at what the title contenders were doing last season. Chelsea conceded 6. Arsenal conceded 8. The teams that finished in the top 3, even Man City, had conceded 20, and yet still managed to pip us to third. Actually doing that did give me nightmares as to how it is they managed to do that, because you looked at the games, the first 5 they'd lost pretty much. It was absolutely atrocious. So we really didn't take advantage of that, but never mind, this is meant to be a positive day. Helen, why is it that goal difference has managed to change? What is it about the defence? Is it to do with what Joseph was just saying, how those injuries have been kept away, so we've got a nice solid back four? We know that Mary Earps is still a great goalkeeper. She was great last season. It's not like all of a sudden she's woken up and gone, I'll choose this year to be great. What's happened? What do you think Mark has done with that defence that's managed to make it so impenetrable?
That's a tricky one. I think obviously having Millie Turner back, that's a big plus. The addition of Maya again, and yeah, I think everyone's just raised their game. Like Sarah was saying, with the competition, they have to be as flawless as you can be week in, week out to make sure they're selected.
And they have been, haven't they? To be fair, that, like we said already, that back five pretty much picks itself. I mean, I don't know. Is there anyone on here who thinks there should be another defender or goalkeeper starting at any point yet? Or are we all pretty much settled on the fact that should be the back five, and we only change it if, like, we're playing against a team 4 leagues down or something silly like that? Anybody think differently? No. So there we go. That's exactly what we'd expect. So that back five is looking really, really good. Sarah, what do you think about this that Sporty just put up? Do you think adding Charlotte Healy's helped and having that sort of link between the development squad and the first team, that conversation that's constantly going on between them? Because we haven't seen a huge number of development players come up and play. Do you think Sporty's right here? Does that make a difference, having that addition as well?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. I mean, obviously we're out of the Conti Cup now, so if we'd managed to progress in that, we might have maybe seen a few more youth players come in, but obviously we've still got an FA Cup run to consider. So I mean, fingers crossed we go all the way, but I think maybe hopefully we might see a bit more of that when there's more of a need to rest a lot of the regular starters. So yeah, I think it can only be a positive thing.
Absolutely. Beth, Joseph here's giving a shout out for Tunkara. Do you think Tunkara's done enough to earn a shout to be put in the back five? Or do you think, much like the other two and myself, really, that actually we should put a great big load of hazard tape over them and say, do not touch, and just leave alone unless, emergencies occur?
Yeah, no, I agree with you guys. Definitely. Keep it in. The back line's been doing amazing. Don't want to shake it up if it's doing well. If there's an injury, bring her in. If not, keep it the way it is.
Interesting. There's a couple of interesting things being put up here now. Carol's just put, Lisa also has such a powerful presence on the pitch. I think she'll be a huge help in midfield. We haven't seen much, if anything, really, of Lisa yet, but it's fair to say there are a lot of people excited about seeing her when she finally does get to do some minutes for us. And also Chris Ratcliffe saying we're better all around this season, good signing. It's all adding up, and there is. Do you think that's it, Grace? It's not just one, as Helen said at the beginning, it's not really just one thing. It's just lots of little things that have obviously been planned really well and have all just started to come together? Or is he just lucky?
I think definitely, no, I think reinforcing as well, like if we do need to look to the bench, we've actually got ideas off the bench now. We're not just sort of relying on the same old people again. I think like with the back five, I think we've got some good players to come off the bench. We've got Aoife coming back as well. So we've got really strong defence, got a strong midfield, got new signings coming in as well that haven't yet played. All around, the recruitment I think has been very, very good in helping that development on the pitch as well. Players are also in some ways fighting for their positions every game. With one bad game, they've got good players off the bench to come on and take their place.
Absolutely. Now, we've spoken a little bit about the defence. Just wanted to move briefly on to the attack because, as I said before, currently as it stands, 38 goals scored. Chelsea are the closest to us with 35. But again, when you look at last season after 14 games, that would be more goals scored than any other team, including Chelsea and Arsenal again. So what's happening there? Because we can't even just say that it's necessarily just a front line, can we, Helen? Because the goals have been spread out. I mean, I think we're up to something like 15, 16 different goal scorers. And when we start scoring 5-0s generally, this weekend accepted, it's often 5 different players that go and score the goal. It's like really rare that we have someone like Letty Russo banging in the 3 and all of a sudden us going, oh, only the 3 goal scorers today.
Yeah, obviously they've been spread about the players, spreading the goals around the starting 11. The centre halves have chipped in with a couple, some from midfield. I think it's just, again, the relationships building. So you're not, you might not always play the pass into the forward. You could play it to the right wing, the left wing, or back into the midfield, and they'll have a shot, and it ends up being a goal. So, and I think confidence as well. The influence from the Euros, from the Lionesses, the teammates we have from that team, they were used to winning. So I think that must have filtered through, and just playing more attacking football maybe as well.
Sarah, are you seeing a difference in the attack and the midfield? Are you seeing, now that we've got a more settled, because there was often changes there, Jackie Groner might come in, Hayley Ladd wasn't always the starter. There was lots of little movements going on. It was almost like Mark was trying to find his best midfield. He seems settled and happy now with the Zellum, Ladd and Toon trio. Is it now a case of, now that he's got that, the rotation really tends to be around the attack, and is that helping or not, do you think?
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. I mean, even looking at the subs, did he make all 5 substitutions, I think, at the weekend? And it was just mostly attacking players coming in. But yeah, I mean, it seems to be working. So I know a lot of people are, have their issues with certain players not getting minutes, and you obviously, you'd like to see some more minutes for certain players, but I just think if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Absolutely. This is an interesting one again from Carol. Chelsea, Russo will be pivotal. She caused the Chelsea defence real problems last time, so we'll definitely need her this weekend. But again, this is it, isn't it, Beth? We're not relying on 1 or 2 players to score. We've got goals coming from everyone. I mean, I know I get told off for saying this, but our midfield is actually scoring goals. We're having people, Hannah Blundell, she's on 2 now already. Defenders are scoring. I'm surprised Mary Earps hasn't got in on the act at the moment. It's not just 1 or 2, is it, Beth?
No, and that's actually really funny because I just thought of Mary Earps just booming it down and somehow, some way going in. But yeah,
doing a Schmeichel.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's coming from everywhere. It's not just the front line. It's not 1, 2 players. I can't think of a player that hasn't at least gotten multiple shots on goal. Obviously, some of the subs haven't gotten a goal yet, but just getting chances, and they'll go in if they keep trying, hopefully. But yeah, it's coming from everywhere, and it's wonderful. And maybe we'll see a Mary Earps goal someday.
That'd be amazing. Honestly, I think if Mary Earps scores, then that's it. It's game over. That's just unreal. But if Andre's pretty much stolen a great point I was going to say here for you, Grace, which is only Leslie and Leah are top 10 in goal scoring. And in the WSL, that's true. So Leslie's on 8 goals at the moment. I think Leah's on 6. So that's 14 goals. That means there's 24 goals that have been scored amongst the other, shall we say, 9 positions on the pitch. And bearing in mind that Leah's been injured for a few games as well, that's quite stunning, isn't it? We've got those 2 people that have managed to get more goals than Bunny Shaw together, and then the rest of our team just peppering that goal with loads of other goals. I mean, that really is quite exciting, because that was the whole point of getting those attacking options that Mark brought in during the summer.
Yeah, I think even you see the opening day, defence and Maya getting 2 for herself, is coming from those set pieces as well. We can expect big things from those other players now. Like we said earlier, we're not just relying on the out-and-out strikers or wingers to get these goals now. We can call upon, Maya, Honor with the assists, Blundell, as you said, has already got 2 for herself. Millie Turner as well against Arsenal. These players who have been so reliable for us in the past are now coming out with these big goals, even in positions where you wouldn't really expect them to.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Carol, I agree with you. So 0-0 against Chelsea, get a penalty. Absolutely. Let's whack Mary on it. I'm totally up for that. And I'll tell you what, she'd only go and score it and all. She's just in that sort of mood. Now, I'll tell you something else that I found interesting. I couldn't do a graphic for this one because, number 1, I'm not that clever, and number 2, I ran out of time. But what I found really interesting was obviously looking at the games up to 14 games gone. That means there's 8 games left. My maths is still good in that respect. And it was quite interesting seeing the number of points that the teams gained from their last 8 games. So, for example, Leicester, they only went on to get 4. And yet they still stayed up, which was quite entertaining. But that says more about Birmingham. Even though they got 7, it wasn't quite enough. But Reading were the worst. They only got 3 points out of their last 8 games. But what I found really, really interesting, Spurs, we should probably do Spurs, they got 5. So that doesn't bode well, does it? But Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester City got 24 from 24. They won their last 8 games. We, Manchester United, got 17 out of our last 24. Now, obviously, that would have changed. If we'd have beaten Chelsea on the last game of the season, Chelsea would have only got 21 and we'd have got 20. And all of a sudden, you're talking about a very different world because it would have been one where we made the Champions League as well. So it's a very different sort of situation then. But as it is, the stats are what the stats are. Does this not show now, or do you think there's anything to take from that about how the teams that do best in the WSL maybe need to have that ruthless streak going all the way across? And as a result now, does that make, and it's a bit of a crap question really, but does that now make Chelsea must win, Helen?
Well, I think, because it's a short league, isn't it? In comparison to the men's game, and just with the number of teams in it, you lose 2-3 games, your title defense is over if you have got one. So yeah, you'd like to win every game, of course. I know that's not possible always, but I think because I think the draws are funny because I think they're almost as, obviously they're not as bad as a loss, but it seems that way. They can really sort of hamper teams when they get a draw, and especially as we know last season, those draws where we were in winning positions and sort of threw it away. We saw what it did at the end for trying to get the 3rd spot. So I think, Chelsea, I think, is a must-win for different reasons. Maybe for the mentality to finally say we've beaten them, like it was at the Emirates against Arsenal. That was a sort of the monkey off your back kind of result. So
yeah, we do need that. Sarah, what I think was really interesting again was looking at it was with 1-5, drew 2, lost 1. Obviously, the loss came on the last day of the season against Chelsea, and at that point, even then, we still had the opportunity of finishing in the top 3. But it was those 2 little draws, wasn't it? West Ham 1-0 up, and Helen just spoke about how the sort of last-minute goals were costing us. We know the Spurs one, but in that run of 8, when we knew we had to win, there was no wriggle room. You couldn't go, we've still got 15 games to go, it doesn't matter. At that point, conceding that goal against West Ham, it felt bad, but then 0-0 against Aston Villa pretty much pulled us out of it. Is that how tight you think it's going to be this season? Because we've had such a good start to the season. We seem so far away from everybody else. I mean, I'll point it out again. Just look how far away we are from 4th. You know, it's a 9-point gap. But, of course, Arsenal and Chelsea have got those 2 games in hand, and Man City have got the points on the board. Are we in that sort of position? Can we afford to lose a couple? Where do you see the next 8 games going?
I really don't think we can afford to lose a couple. I mean, we still have to play Chelsea, City, and Arsenal again, so that's going to be crucial. I really do think Chelsea is a must-win game, to be honest. I mean, well, we certainly can't afford to lose it, but I think what's interesting about last season is that, you know, most of our draws were away games. So, I mean, we've had better away form this season up to this point, but I think we really need to avoid, you know, letting things slip like that again. Yeah, we need to maintain our away form.
Absolutely. And it has been such great form. Connor's decided to butt in to let some people know that we do have a special show on Chelsea coming out tomorrow afternoon, and the fan preview on Friday. And I've got to say, I didn't know anything about the Chelsea one coming out tomorrow, so that'll be good. Nice little one to wet your whistle before Manchester United go out there and smash Real Betis, the men obviously. And then, yes, on Friday, we'll get some fans in and they can talk to us about how they think the Chelsea game is going to go. It's going to be huge. It's massive. It's such a big game. But Beth, again, last 8 games, what are you seeing? How much importance do you place on it? Do you still think we're going for a title challenge here? Are you still like me, holding on to that particular flag that I planted in the ground on day one? Or are you quite happy with just making it into the top 3 this year?
Ideally, I would like a title, just to show it in people's faces. But I don't know. Like, it's going to be a tough stretch. If we can pull it off, it'll be wonderful and amazing. But everyone's correct. Like, the last 8 games are must-wins, especially if they still want to go for a title. If that is the team's mentality, then it is a must-win. If they are okay with only being top 3, which is great, that would be a great achievement, then maybe a draw would be okay. But still, I would say that they have to, with only a 9-point gap, it's pretty much must-win for the rest of the season.
Absolutely. Carol's put it here, we need to win every game left because I can't see Chelsea slipping up. And she's not wrong. Mathematically, the only way Manchester United win the league, Grace, is if we win every single game. Because despite Chelsea's, and I'll show it again because I know some people get a bit confused, despite Chelsea's 2 games in hand, which would, of course, take them to 37 points, they've still got to play us. So therefore, that loses sort of one of those games. So as it stands, we'd be in a position where if we beat Chelsea and win the last 7 games, we will win the league. That's it. There's nobody that can beat us. With that in mind then, Grace, if we do lose to Chelsea, do I have to finally kiss bye to the title? Or can I still sit here and go, there's hope, lads and lasses. There's hope.
I think there is always hope. I know Chelsea are such a dominant side anyway, but they have slipped up this season. They did slip up against Liverpool in that opening game. I mean, obviously that loss to Arsenal at the weekend in the cup final as well Chelsea are such a mentality based side. I don't think them losing a cup final is going to massively, I think if anything it benefits them in terms of regaining that momentum and trying to push on now for that league. But I don't think the optimistic side of me says don't lose hope if we do lose to Chelsea, but at the same time it will be difficult, on paper, seeing Chelsea dropping points again. But like I think a few people have said in the comments, a draw this season has felt like a loss at times, and I think the Everton one especially, that 0-0 draw, I don't think it will cost us fully, but I think if we are looking at the title, I think that is a massive key point for us there, that one singular.
Absolutely. And Chelsea play Brighton today. You're all correct with what you're saying. I think Arsenal are playing tonight as well. I can't remember who they're playing, though. Do you know who Arsenal's playing? Somebody's going to Google that. Or I'll have a look in a second. But anyway, I'm pretty sure Arsenal are playing tonight as well. Who?
Liverpool.
That'll do. Yeah, they can play Liverpool. That's fine. It's a horrible one, isn't it? Because let's be honest, we want Arsenal to lose. But by the same token, I don't want Liverpool to win. But there we are. It reminds me of the last season, Birmingham. They in that first 14 games, they only won one game, and the game they won was against Arsenal. So it just goes to show that even if you are having a really poor season, you could still just have that one team that just absolutely bamboozles the opposition, gets the points, and helps you out. So absolutely, that's the joy of this league at the moment. Now, if you remember, everybody, we were talking about this, and all of that conversation has led up to this question: are we Champions League ready? So let's be positive and say that whether we win the title or not, we're finishing in the top 3. We make it to the Champions League. Now, the question really is, do you think we're ready? And I'd like to point out we've played some pre-season friendlies against some European sides. We played Paris Saint-Germain and Bayern Munich, of course. So we did that, I presume, in preparation for the hope that we would make it into Europe, so they had an idea. We didn't embarrass ourselves in those games, but it was only a friendly. What do you think as a 4? And I'm not going to ask any more questions. I just want you to go around and tell us what you think. Are we Champions League ready, yes or no? What could the problems be? And I'll also point out the little sub bit that Carol put on earlier, which was if we lose some of our players like Honor or Lessie or someone like that, does that change your opinion on whether or not we're Champions League ready? And we're going to go around the other way because I feel a bit sorry for Helen. I keep picking on her first. So I'm going to upset Grace now and start with her. Sorry, Grace.
It's a tough one. I do think we are Champions League ready. Like you mentioned there, the preseason games, the PSG, we came away with the win, and we didn't even have. I don't think we didn't have a back in goal. We didn't have the Euros that made the final. We didn't have them in the squad, and I think it was a very it was a new squad at the time with Leon coming in, Garcia as well, and I think the Bayern defeat wasn't the best, but at the same time, it's experience, and they did have a strong side out. We didn't, and I do think in one way we are ready. Again, if we do lose those key players in Honor and Alessia, I think it'll be a tough experience, but it'll be a good learning curve either way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, like Grace was saying, we didn't embarrass ourselves. We looked actually pretty impressive, to be honest, compared to what I was expecting, which is kind of sad for me to say that. But yeah, I thought we looked good in preseason. I don't know if we will be, especially if we lose those key players, if we have to go get up against Bayern Munich, especially Barcelona, or like the bigger teams, are we ready for them? First season, maybe not, but the lower Champions League teams, yeah, we're definitely ready. No matter if we have Russo and Anna or not, I think we could at least win a game or two in the Champions League.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. And also some of the comments here, asking it depends what your definition of ready is. Do I think we would be ready to go all the way in the competition? No, I don't think so. But are we ready to test ourselves against some of these teams? Absolutely. I mean, I think we have enough talent in the squad to do it. And as to whether, we would be happy with just giving it a go, throwing everything at it, and maybe being eliminated early on. I mean, obviously, we all want to go on and win trophies, but I personally would be happy to qualify at this stage and then see where we can take it. I think losing Anna and Leslie would be, I would be concerned about that. I think it would, it would weaken the squad a lot, obviously, but I'd be hopeful that they'd both stay if we qualify for the Champions League. So fingers crossed for that.
Absolutely. Sometimes I get really lost in some of these comments when I'm trying to throw them all up there. But you did a really good job of maintaining my attention to you speaking whilst I did that, because you were making some fantastic points there. Somebody who's not necessarily making a fantastic point is our resident boss, Connor. I don't agree with you, Connor, but this won't surprise you. I see where you're going. The question would be how many of our players make it into the best teams in the UWCL. I'd argue 4 or 5 at most, so not fully ready. Look at City. I've just realised I've completely jumped in there and I told Helen to go straight in. So, sorry. Completely. See, he gets on me, gets right in there. My bad. But yeah, he's put on here, not fully ready. Look at City in recent years, didn't even make the groups. But I would argue when Leicester went and won the title, how many of their players would have walked into some of the top Premier League teams? I'd best say maybe only 4 or 5. So, do you want to answer that a little bit, Helen, there? And I'll apologise and shout at myself whilst I mute, because I shouldn't have done that. Sorry.
I think someone else said in the comments as well, it might be we have a handful of really good Champions League level players, but if they can do that in our team and our team works because they're in that team and it's about the team, then I think we are ready. Probably, as I think Sarah said, I wouldn't want to play Barcelona or Lyon tomorrow kind of thing. But I think the early stages we'd be ready and could compete, hopefully a bit better than Man City have of late. And even if we lose some of our star players, I think the fact that we would have qualified for Champions League should make us able to attract a similar caliber of player to replace them if we need to.
It's interesting. I found this quite interesting as well, Helen. I'll ask you to give us your point on this as well. It says, for me, Honor and Mary can enter any team in Europe right now, and I'll totally agree with that. But what I found interesting was when we had the teams of the year that were brought out, and this FIFA Best Awards ceremony that happened, Honor wasn't even in the top 3. So do you feel like we at Manchester United are overrating her? Do you think that we're sitting there going, she's as good as this, when actually we're just not necessarily having as much sight of some other right backs that might be there? Because I agree with this. I think Honor would walk into pretty much any side, and I think Honor is probably a better right back than Lucy Bronze, but who did get there. But I don't know, maybe because we can do it. We all overinflate our own teams because we are biased. That is very much the nature of the beast. But what do you think? Because this is a fair point, and she was nowhere near it in terms of their awards. What do you think on that?
I think perhaps the WSL isn't as visible worldwide as some of the other teams. There's some of the other countries' leagues, and if, as at the moment, she's not playing for the national team for different reasons, but that won't put her in the eyes of all the other countries and all the other people who vote from those countries. And I suppose she's not exactly an established name yet, is she? She's still young. She's sort of had 1.5, 2 seasons of, in our opinion, being the best. So I think she just needs to be recognised more throughout the game, however that happens. And I suppose there is a bit of truth to, we might not be seeing the other players that could be better than her as well in the other leagues.
Point. I'm going to throw up a question that Sporty's put in because it kind of ties into what Sarah mentioned earlier. As I asked earlier, Champions League ready, in what sense? Are fans happy to just play in the competition, or do we want to see the team compete for the trophy? I think the question is the team ready? Is it going to go there, or is it just going to get embarrassed in every single game? But this is kind of the question that he's asking. So I'm going to ask you all just to answer it briefly. But for you, next year, will you just be happy to have made it and then look for next season, the end of the season after, to be the next progression? Well, we're in it. Now we need to do better. Or would you want to see us compete? Do you want to see us get past the group stages and just the knockouts? Is getting further to it something that you think we should be aiming to do? So again, let's really mess it around. Go on, Beth, you start on this one. Why not?
Yeah, to be honest, I think it depends on the contracts. I think if we keep the players that we want to keep, then ideally I would like to see us get out of the group, or at least very much attempt, and then possibly go a little bit deeper. Again, this is just ideally. But if we lose players, then yeah, just competing, and we'll see what happens in the coming years after we get more players in.
All right. Grace, happy to play, or do you want to compete?
I think a bit of both. I completely agree with Beth there. Like, if we do lose those players, I think it would just be a good experience to have our team as a whole in the competition and getting that Champions League experience. But at the same time, if we do manage to keep hold of our key players again, then I think it's all about, pushing as far as we can go, getting that experience again. But also, if we do get out the group stage, I don't see why we can't keep aiming for the next rounds and see where we can go with it.
Helen?
I'd expect a Man United team to want to go as far as they can in any competition they're in, whether it's the first time being in it or the 80th time.
Fair points. And Sarah, to finish off this little segment.
Well, yeah, I'd love us to compete. I mean, I wouldn't be. Well, of course, I would be devastated if we went out early. I think, that's because we're Manchester United. But I expect that it'll be a learning experience. We'll see how we fare over the coming season, and hopefully build on that in seasons to come. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's really just one game at a time. You just focus on the next game and see what happens. So we could do very well, hopefully.
Absolutely. I feel like it's all about progression. I think you're all right. And I think that actually, as long as we've made it, that's a step. And then whatever happens, we've just got to look to do better the year after. And that means constantly qualifying for the Champions League and constantly trying to do better. But yeah, fair points, everyone. Chris gets a round of applause for being the first person to mention Connor's atrocious burger eating ways. And speaking of Connor, there he is. He says, ready to qualify, sure. Ready to win it? No chance. Depends who stays and goes as well. And I do wonder, you know, we talk a lot about Honor staying if we make it to the Champions League, but does she also want to believe that we're going to compete in it? She's surely maybe not going to be just happy to just turn up and have had 3 games in the Champions League and go, well, that was brilliant, thank you very much. I'm sure she's going to want to try and go deep in it as well. So lots of things being said there, and we will run through some of those points in just a moment. But I want to evolve this conversation just briefly, as we're here on International Women's Day, to our top striker, the one with 8 goals, Leslie Russo. We've spoken a lot about her. But the question that's sort of hitting me now at the moment, looking at the strikers charts, she's above Sam Kerr. She's scored more goals than her in WSL. You can't count them over all competitions because obviously she's been playing in Europe and that's something that Leslie hasn't had the chance to do. But internationally, she's been scoring goals. She's been up for a Puskas Award. Are we seeing this season Leslie Russo having her proper breakout season? Would you now rank her when you start talking about the great strikers in the WSL? Miedemar, Bede. Bede? Who is she? Beth Mead. Mead. Kerr. We start shouting about all of these people. Do we now need to definitely make sure that Leslie Russo's name is mentioned in the same breath? Or do we need to see this over a few more seasons? I'm going to start with Sarah this time.
Yep, I absolutely think she deserves to be mentioned alongside all those players. I mean, obviously, we haven't seen her, you know, in Europe at club level yet, but she's a Euros winner with England. And I think just the whole thing about, you know, the world record bids from Arsenal is a good indication. And I remember watching Sky Sports News on deadline day, and it was just one of the main stories on the screen for hours. And I think that in itself is an indication of just how highly she's rated. Obviously not just by United fans, but by everybody else too. And I think she deserves to be.
Points. Grace.
Yeah, I'd completely agree. To be fair, I think she's still so young as well, so there's still so much to come from her. You know, she's, like you were saying, the amount of like people that were coming in for her or are still set to want to talk to her over the summer by potentially prizing her away from United as well. I think that just shows how much of a talent she is and how more she's still got so much more to develop in a game. You know, she's up there with the top goal scorers. It doesn't just happen over one season. I think she's still got plenty to come, and you know, I would say this is her breakout season as well, and she's still got plenty more to come, like I said.
100%. And this here that Carol's put Helen, she's definitely up there, especially considering the injuries that she came back from as well. So you think about last season, obviously was when she returned back from the injury, the first game against Leicester. She's put lots of work in since that first game against Leicester that she came back in, because she's gone on, had an excellent Euros, scored some great goals. And let's not forget that she had to break into that side. You know, Beth England and people like that were being picked above her. She fought herself into that side, became a European Championship winner, and now look at her go with United as well. It's just unreal, really, isn't it?
Yeah, she's, I suppose, gone from a relatively unknown to somewhat stratospheric. And of course, on the world stage, doing what she did in the manner she did, the style of goals. I don't think, you know, certainly everyone goes on about the back heel, but the one against Northern Ireland, the turn and shot. So, yeah, she certainly put her name on the map. And yeah, as everyone said, she's still young. She's got so much potential still. She can be molded into a lot more. She's always learning from her teammates, from other players. So yeah, I think she's becoming a star in her own right.
Well, Beth, Connor's definitely on one today. He's put a similar question to what he asked above. Does she get into the best sides in Europe? I think she definitely gets in at Arsenal, but that's about it. So, for number one, I think your first problem here is that you put Arsenal as one of the best teams in Europe potentially there. That's what it sounds like you've done there. And frankly, I think you need to go and give your head a wobble and get your burger out of the microwave. So that's the first thing you need to do. But what do you think, Beth? Would she get into the best sides in Europe? Would she get into Chelsea? Would she get into Lyon, Barcelona, Paris Saint-Germain? What do you reckon?
To be honest, that's kind of hard. I can see her getting into them. Absolutely. But at the same time, I can also see her having to develop into the team and getting a grip of how each team plays. Because not every team's going to play the exact same. Obviously, we've seen that. But she definitely has the potential. If she would go to, hopefully this isn't the case, but if she would go to one of the top teams, kind of making her way into the team over the course of a season or two, absolutely. But I can also see her just jumping right in, depending on the game and depending on how the team plays. So it's kind of a both.
Wow. Connor's responded. They all still fart in the UWCL, one of the best sides in Europe. I suppose that's a reasonable point, Connor. I feel like you've justified that better than you normally justify your arguments, so well done. And then Don just goes straight in and agrees. Doesn't get into Lyon, Chelsea, Barca, PSG, Wolfsburg or Bayern. I don't know enough about those teams to argue with you people. So I'm just going to go, of course, Russo would walk into anything because she's a Man United player. And so therefore, she is just better than anybody else. That's the end of it. Game over. I don't know if you'll be able to do this off the hoof, but it's literally a question that just came to my mind. Again, we're celebrating all things International Women's Day. So what do you reckon's her best goal? Could be for England, could be for Man United. Is there a goal when you go Leslie Russo that you go, that's the goal? I'm going to be honest, for me, it's the back heel. I just remember watching that and thinking, she plays for us. That's amazing. What would it be for you lot? Let's kick off with, I'm going to have to go back to Helen now. I've given you enough breaks.
Maybe the goal at the Emirates, I think, for United. Are we doing a United and an England one? Or
if you want to go in for both, why not? I'm not going to argue with you.
And I know everyone loves the back heel, but the one against Northern Ireland for England, for me. Use the cat.
We love that cat. Honestly, there's the wandering past like, hi. No, brilliant. And yes, that goal against Arsenal, the feels it gave you. Beth?
I do have to go with the back heel just because I was watching the game and when it happened, I ended up throwing my laptop like halfway across the room. So that's yeah.
Fair play. Bad news, apparently Arsenal and Chelsea are both winning, but it doesn't change the fact that if we win every game, we win the title. So plenty of time still to go. Grace, which goal would you pick?
I would say the Emirates one as well. Her scoring against Arsenal, I think that was such a, it may not be her best goal, but I think it's a crucial goal. And I think especially against Arsenal as well, it's at the Emirates. It was such a big moment.
Is this the goal you were talking about, Helen?
Yeah. Yes, sorry.
We're going to have to put Northern in that. You're going to upset people if you carry on doing things like Northern Ireland. We didn't score against Diane Caldwell. Speaking of Ireland, not Northern Ireland, Sarah, which goals would you pick?
Well, yeah, my heart is definitely telling me that goal at the Emirates. I mean, it's got that emotional connection to just what it represented. But from a technical point of view, the back heel, I think, has to be one of the best I've seen. Like Beth, I was watching it at the time and, I think everyone in the house just went, whoa, what was that? So, yeah, those two.
Connor picked an excellent one, I've got to be honest. This one against Reading last season, the one where Honour's smashed the ball really hard. It's hit the top of the bar. It's definitely gone in. The lino's gone. No, didn't see it. Ends up coming back to Leslie Russo. Oh, what a right-footed shot that was, top corner. Absolutely brilliant. But then John Commode comes in with, Then I forgot this one. Best goal for United, solo goal against Spurs last season. It was awesome. Little run down the right-hand side. Ashley Neville sits her down, and then wallop, in it goes. And that was an amazing goal. Now that I think about that one, I then find myself agreeing with Connor again. That is a very good shout, John Commode. That one was awesome. Lots of people still saying the back heel, because the cheek of it was brilliant. I don't even think she was trying to be cheeky. I do think she just literally went, I can't kick this forward, so I'm going to have to kick it back. And she just does it instinctively. And I think that's what I mean about Nessie at the moment. It's her instincts are starting to get there. I think when she has time to think about it, the ones that we would think she should score, they seem to be the ones that she ends up hitting straight at the goalkeeper. Whereas the ones where she just goes for it and shoots without really thinking about it, they're the ones that seem to go in. It's quite scary. Let's rank her out of 10. People keep telling me she's got potential. So if she's got potential, she can't be 10 out of 10. So what do we think? Can we still say room to grow? Where would we put her? So we'll just go for numbers. Nice and easy. All the way around. Helen, then Sarah, then Beth, then Grace. And then we'll move on.
7.5.
Oh, interesting. Nice. We've gone decimals. Love that. Love that. So 2.5% progression possible, points possible as well. Sarah.
8.
Oh, she's gone 8. Didn't agree with you. She rounded up.
I can't do maths.
I can, don't worry. It's all good.
Also 8.
Also 8. Didn't want to go. Do we have an increase on 8? Where's Grace going?
I'm going to go a bit lower. I'm going to go just 7. I reckon she's got quite a bit of room for improvement there as well. I think the sky's the limit.
Nice. Well, apparently both teams are winning 2-0 now, so lots of people here trying to bring us down, which is bad news. But yes, get in the chat with your comments. What are you going? Carol, there we go. She's straight in with it. 8.5 for Carol. She's gone above you all. And then Sarah Sproston, 8.25. Which is taking ranking out of 10 to a whole new level. Not quite 8.5, 8.25, somewhere in between. Yeah, there you go. Honestly, some of you, Joseph, 8.7. Goodness, we've got into diving bits now, haven't we? I'm surprised you haven't got like 8.649. And Chris Ratcliffe thinks she's almost there. 9. She is that good. So there we go. Hello, what's happening here? 7.5, almost an 8, but I'm reserving judgment from John Commode. And Venus Modeste, yes, this is true. We need to beat Chelsea to win the league. It's as simple as that. Absolutely, that's a fact. We do need to beat Chelsea, otherwise it will be incredibly difficult. Excellent. So listen, we've covered 2 of the 4 things that I was considering talking about today. The 4th one doesn't take too much, so let's just have a quick go on that one first, shall we? Grace Clinton. Let's have a quick chat about her, because she scored again, and I didn't see too much of it. It looked like quite a good goal, but that's a couple of goals now and a red card. What are we thinking about Grace Clinton? Do we think she's going to be ready to come back next season and challenge for a place, or do we think she's still perhaps a bit more long-term and might need a few more loans? Let's go with Sarah on this one, please.
Well, I didn't see that particular goal either, but I think she's clearly demonstrating that she has, a lot of talent. And well, obviously we wouldn't have signed her if we hadn't seen that potential. So yeah, I think take her back at the end of the season, give her a run out, see what happens. I mean, there's always the option of loaning her out again at a later stage, but I would say give her a run out, let her show what she can do.
What do you think, Beth?
I completely agree. Short and simple, to the point.
I love short and simple, though. I've spent my whole life being short and simple. So there we go. Grace.
I'd probably say similar. I think give her until maybe the January transfer window, and then potentially maybe send her into a WSL team on loan. Maybe like an Everton or an Aston Villa. Send her back to Everton, Aston Villa, just for a bit more experience in the WSL, because obviously she's in the Championship doing well. So maybe the next step up for her is a WSL team.
Okie dokie. Helen?
Yeah, that's a good point from Grace. I agree with that. She's sort of cutting her teeth in the championship, so before maybe she's full throttle into the United team, maybe send her on loan to Brighton, Leicester, something like that.
And possibly also on whether or not Wildebay Reset is still here. We're talking about recruitment there. So obviously if VBR's gone off, then there is certainly a possibility for a understudy for Ella Toon, and Grace Clinton could well be that person. It's about the third time you mentioned this, Carol, so I will address it for you. You've poked the bear. So can I just say it's ironic of Man United doing the whole embrace equality when they won't give honour unless he good enough contracts, plus Grace is doing well. Thank you for that bit at the end. Grace is doing good. But I still don't see where anybody's getting this from, that we're not giving them good enough contracts. Good enough compared to who? Unless somebody can point me to a link that actually shows us that we've offered them X amount of money and they've turned that down because they feel that's laughable compared to anywhere else, then it's all just pie in the sky, really, isn't it? So it's all rumours. So as you believe in that rumour, here's a little rumour for you. We've actually offered them exactly what they wanted and they've just said no because they're waiting for Champions League. Who knows? See how you feel about that one. I'm sure there'll be an answer coming up very soon. I look forward to seeing it. But last thing that I wanted to talk about, and we're nearly there. We've nearly done the whole hour. I was well impressed with how long that first conversation took. You all did so well. I wanted to talk briefly about, and I'm sorry, this will probably alien anybody that's not necessarily living within the United Kingdom, but it's quite important nonetheless. The news that came out this morning on International Women's Day about the funding at the moment at grassroots level. And grassroots football is like literally the lifeblood of any sport. If you're not going to teach children how to do it and get them to have the love of the game, it's not going to translate into proper epic superstars. Now, at the moment, they're talking about giving 2 years, that's loads of money, cheers guys, 2 years of funding into girls football, and also making sure that girls have exactly the same opportunities as boys to be able to play not just football, but sport in general. They want that to happen in schools, where they also want it to be 2 hours a week of PE. Now, I can confirm in the schools I've worked in, it used to be 2 hours a week for PE. Then other subjects started, you must do more about your art. You must do more about your drama. You must do more about this. Oh, they must learn how to speak better. Oh, they need more time to play. There'll be lots of things that come out. It depends what the season is. And the season now, based on all of this, thanks to that brilliant letter that was put out, is that now it's time to go back to PE again. That's going to get a bit of a focus. So it's going to go back to 2 hours a week. But I also heard briefly on Farrah Williams' podcast, it was literally only a snippet, talking about how it might never get to the point of being equal unless girls in schools have got a decent amount of coaching and they've got decent people that know what they're doing. So effectively not just PE teachers. And to a degree, I think I agree, because I can teach you how to play football. And in fact, I do. And I'm all right with it. I can tell you how to kick a ball really well. But am I that gifted that I can kick a ball into the top corner of a goal every single time? Or do I shank it 6 times out of 7, it goes wide, and I only film the 7th? Probably the latter, to be honest with you. So although I know the theory and I can pass the theory on, are we in a situation where if we're really looking for elite footballers to start coming through and to enjoy it and have that level, do we think that within these sorts of situations we can do with just having this? Is this enough? Or is this just a nice way to get a taster so they get involved, and then actually that could translate into them getting more outside of school? Girls football teams where you're not being forced into, because in schools quite often you're having to play with the boys at the same time. Is it a case of at the moment we just need to get the interest and then get a great big team and it grows that way organically? What are your thoughts and feelings on this sort of news in grassroots football? How do we get those kids to enjoy it at school and then move up into playing for Manchester United women in 10 years' time? I'm going to ask you, Beth, last, because there's going to be a slight difference to the question for you, because otherwise you're just going to go, I don't know, I don't live there. Helen, we'll kick off with you.
I think it's a positive step. It must have been needed. I remember in primary school, I played football with the boys, and it wasn't even an issue. I mean, it wasn't coached or anything. We were just kicking it around the playground. And then I wanted to do that at secondary school, but was told I couldn't. So that was it. And then I didn't have any chance to play football again until I was about 17. So I think it is certainly needed. It must be better than what's already there, or what isn't there, and as the case may be. But yeah, as for actual sort of talent centres and specialist coaching, I don't know if it will trickle through to that. Hopefully, if enough girls and young people want to experience it at school and then realise they've got the talent and want to carry it on, they can find the places where that will nurture their talent as young teenagers and stuff.
Absolutely. Grace, I'm going to ask you the question as well, but whilst we do, I'm just going to bat something back to some of the people in the comments. So Paul's put here, the Athletic have said that 2 other clubs are offered on a double the United offer. Well, let's say that the top paid people at Manchester United women are paid £50,000 and we've offered them £60,000 or £70,000, so they're getting more. They're offering £140,000. Are you genuinely saying that we break the bank to that level, under the knowledge that other players are going to ask for that as well? So I don't know. Tell me if that's genuinely what you think we should do, because if we do, then I've got a car outside that I want to sell you. Grace, what do you reckon?
I think, like Helen was saying, the interest needs to go up with girls football. I know there is quite a few already girls getting involved in football, especially after the Euro success. But also, I think it does come down to the coaching as well. I think there needs to be more female, football coaches to help them out, because it's fine having like the male coaches, but I think the difference in there is still physical differences between male and female. So I think definitely get involved with females coaching as well. I think would be a massive. And I think it is just about getting the interest to begin with, but also I think there is massive progress already there.
Absolutely, 100%. And Sarah, what would you think? Oh, hello, she's muted. There
Sorry.
you go. All right, go for it.
I'm thinking back to my own experience in school. I mean, it's kind of, we have a slightly different situation. One of the problems we've had with football is that it's always been in competition with Gaelic games. So you'll get a lot of talented young players maybe choosing to play Gaelic football instead. So that's a whole other issue. But we often had coaches from local clubs come in to do even after school activities, and a lot of girls got involved that way. So I think this is a great step, but I think with all respect to PE teachers, I think maybe getting local coaches involved to go into the schools and maybe take some of the classes would be a good idea.
Absolutely. I think you are right. Paul, I'm just going to throw this out to you again. You're saying ambition is not just measured in results. No, it's not, mate. But Barcelona, do you think they're in trouble at the moment because they, A, give too much money to players and spend too much money to agents and things like that, or because they're, B, financially solvent and doing sensible things when it comes to contracts? You can't just go, we'll just throw millions of pounds at it. Necessarily. It doesn't always work. You've got to have a structure. I'm not saying we shouldn't break that structure if the money's there, but you've got to work to a budget. That's how life works, sadly, I think. But then, maybe I'm wrong. Beth, in America, it's very different. So I'm going to throw it to you slightly differently. We've spoken to you before about the college system. I don't really want to go into that too much. We've done that before. I'm talking about younger, because the college system is there. Football, or as you would call it, soccer, over there is I hate that word. I really do. It makes me skin crawl. It's not necessarily the number one sport. Obviously, you've got American football, baseball, so many other sports that could be played. What do you see in America that's being done to try and engage young girls specifically to play football? And over there, do you think the women's game is bigger than the men's game?
Yeah, so it is women's football / soccer. Sorry. It is bigger, definitely, and it's easier to get girls involved in soccer than it is to get them, at least here in the States, it's easier to get them involved in soccer because it's really only like a couple options that you have for women. It's starting to get a little bit more like there's softball, which is basically the women's equivalent of baseball. I know in the past they've tried to make like women's baseball leagues. I'm assuming that that's still a thing. But women's football is a lot easier to get people involved in because you really only have like cheerleading, you have softball, like I said, you have basketball, which is another huge one, and I'm trying to think of there's obviously swimming, tennis, and like other sports like that. But at the same time, it is a lot different over here because it's a lot of people can't play because of money. I think it's more of a money situation than it is an exposure situation because we have it's called AYSO, is American Youth Soccer Association, I believe is what it's referred to, and it's a program that goes from ages I think it's like U5 or something. It's really really small. It's like pre-K and kindergarten over here, and then all the way up to U19. So, and these are just like you pay, I don't remember how much it is, but it's that like every district has one and it's co-ed. You can play in like just randomly. And a lot of girls go and play that and then they find out like, oh, I like this. But then it turns out their family can't afford to play it to do the academies that are starting over here, or more or less is the travel teams, which is you have to pay thousands of dollars a month to be able to play the game. And that's not excluding like the equipment and a ball if you want it, but it's in the uniforms and it's definitely more a money thing to me at least. But it is easier to get them involved because you have the AYSO, you have other like just pickup games going on. And in the States, it's also more of a kids game. Like at age 5, you throw all of your kids into soccer or football because it is seen as a lot safer than the other sports. Because if you think about baseball, especially at that young age, you have a metal bat, you have a ball flying at you. I remember in 2nd grade, I played baseball, I was the only girl playing baseball. I was terrified of the ball. Like I just stood there and I got struck out all the time. Like it was horrible. But you have a metal bat, and that is what people see as dangerous. American football, very dangerous. Even if it's just the flag version, it can be very dangerous. But they started playing that at a very, very young age. And like girls technically are allowed to play it. Technically, but a lot of parents, including my parents, because I wanted to be the quarterback, said no. So, but they see it as much safer. So they'll throw boys and girls into soccer at age 5 or 6. I've coached and ref kids that love the game. I was reffing an instructional league. And that's the other thing that we have, like instructional leagues. And so basically soccer is it is a lot more of a safe sport and a lot more exposure for kids to be able to play over here than it feels like it is over there, which is very strange to me because you guys invented the sport. Like all of the barriers that you guys are talking about, like I'm always thinking I was never told not to play soccer. The only sport I was not allowed to play in gym class was flag football, and that's because I was trying to pass tennis. But like we were never told not to play a sport. So that blows my mind.
I mean, you're absolutely right. We invented the game. We love to do this. We like inventing things, giving it to other people, and then they can show us how to do it better. We've done it with loads of things. Rugby? Nah, Australia can show us how to do that. Cricket? New Zealand, they'll show us how to do that. There's loads of places that do it. So I think it's wonderful that we've got this game. But the thing that's got it, and obviously, again, for those that don't necessarily know all of these facts, it comes back to the whole Dick Kerr ladies, around about the time of the war. And the height of women's football was just amazing. Everybody loved it. They thought it was brilliant. They were coming to watch it. There was thousands of people watching it. And dare I say it, the men looked at that and went, we can't have this. The men's game's got to be better than the women's game. That's where the money is. That's what needs to happen. So they just banned it. They went, well, you can't play anymore. So we talk about, it's not that football was stopped. Football's available. It's always been available. Anyone can play football. But it then became that stereotypical thing. Football is for boys. Girls don't do that. They go and play netball. Girls will play the netball, boys will play the football. And it's absolutely atrocious. It's the same as the colour. Who decided that the colour pink is only for girls and the colour blue is only for boys? How did that work? It's a colour, for goodness sake. Why can't I wear pink if I want to? And I do, often.
It is interesting because here in the States, we have it more of like, if you play American football, or volleyball, like you're seen as really cool, right? It's changed a lot, but I remember when I was in school, all the soccer/football players were called grass fairies. Like I had been called a grass fairy a lot. And so that is definitely a big difference also. Because like in the early to mid to late 2000s, I graduated high school in 2013. So it didn't really like take off over here as a all over sport of like, oh, we're not going to make fun of you until maybe about the 2011, 2015 World Cup. But we were always called grass fairies. Most of the time it was jokingly, but there were definitely a good amount of people that weren't joking about it.
Wow. I've got a grass fairy. Sounds like a really cool insect.
Right?
What's that? Oh, it's a grass fairy. That's nice. So that's really nice. But yeah, so that's what happened. And now all of a sudden we're fighting to get women to be able to play a game of football, boys and girls, and they play together. It's madness. We've got to get to a point in this country where everything's available for everyone. Why do we have to make it so specific? We did it in loads of things. I can remember when I was younger, you used to get books, and it always used to be adventure books for the boys. Yes, because the boys do the adventures. And then, of course, you go to the girls' book, and it's all princess and fairies, possibly grass fairies. Who knows? I never read the books because they were for girls, and you weren't supposed to read them. Why? It's just good to see everything's evolving eventually. Disney's done the same thing. It's no longer the handsome prince that's got to go and change, save Sleeping Beauty. It could be Frozen, where the women sort it out for themselves, which, let's be honest, is what generally tends to happen. The men don't do it. We don't. Let's be honest. It doesn't happen unless you girls sort it out. And that's why I'm so pleased we've had you on the show. Listen, it's been a banger. It's been an hour and 12 minutes, and some people probably want to go and have dinner. But before we get there, I did put in the chat, I want to ask you one question. It's International Women's Day, in case I haven't mentioned that already. And I want to know somebody, preferably a woman, who has really inspired you in your life. Could be an athletic person, it could be a personal answer, whatever you want. But let's just individually celebrate yourself, a woman who you think has inspired you. So, Grace, we'll kick off with you and let Helen go last, because I really do feel bad for her. But...
That's a tough one. I'd say my mum as well, mainly, but also just carrying on from that other conversation, I'd throw Lotte Moy out there. The work she's doing for the women's game, putting that forward, and straight after they big Euros win, the first thing she thought of was, let's have the girls get into the game as well. So yeah, I'd say my mum first of all, and then Lotte Moy as well.
Beautiful. Beth.
My grandmother, definitely. And then also Abby Wambach. She got me into the game, and I can't thank her enough for being as vulnerable as she's been over the past couple of years with all of the stuff she's been through.
Awesome. Love that. Sarah.
I'd have to say my grandmother. She's the whole reason for my family supporting United. And she was born in the 1920s, so it was definitely not a time when women were openly, passionate about football, and my granddad just had no interest. So she's the one who kickstarted it all, and just in lots of different ways, really, as well. Like just with the jobs she did, early on when they were married. Just she was kind of always just. She's a bit of a trailblazer, really. She just kicked back at the idea that women couldn't do certain things. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Carol's put Serena Williams, a massive inspiration for me, and Yep, she is amazing. I always think back to the interview that's being done with Andy Murray, where they're talking about, the first American player to make it to a semi-final, and he constantly first male American, because Serena was doing it all the time. So really good. Helen, what say you? Who inspired you?
So there was a sprinter in the late 90s, early 2000s for the British team called Joyce Madwalker, and she didn't win loads of medals, but she kept making the qualifying times, kept making the British team, kept making finals. She might have come 6th, 7th, 8th in the finals, but she just kept doing it for the love of the sport. And that's what I thought I'd be if I made it as a sprinter one day, but I didn't.
Fair play. Good answers, everyone. Brilliant. Lovely to be able to celebrate that. For me, it'd be Ella too, because she was literally the one who was one of the first ones that I saw as United put together their team. And also, I asked this question with all of the girls at Stevenage. There's going to be something coming out on the Stevenage social medias, but we did this. We asked all of them, come up with a woman that inspires you. And they weren't very imaginative. We did try and get them to go down the sporting route, but a lot of them were all like, yeah, mum, dad, sister, the usual sort of things as you do, shout out to the fam, all good. And then one of them went, and could you believe it, the Queen. And I'm like, that's a brilliant answer. And all the others were like, can you be inspirational if you're dead? I'm like, I'm pretty sure you can be. Yeah, like Rosa Parks, massive inspiration for people. I'm pretty sure you can be inspirational for what you did. So I'm going to put a special shout out to the Queen, because I feel like she deserved to be mentioned, because, to put up with some of the things that go on in this country and not say anything about it, it is quite amazing. Could you imagine if she'd have had Twitter? That would have been a moment, wouldn't it? So there we go. Guys, it's been absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for spending your evening with us. It's been absolutely brilliant. I've really, really enjoyed it. Hopefully you have too. Hope you have a lovely evening with a nice glass of wine to celebrate a day that is just for you. Congratulations on being women, girls. You've done a cracking job. Keep it going. And for all the people that might be watching this thinking, when's International Men's Day? It's at some point in the year. Who really cares? We don't need it. So it's all good. Brilliant. Thank you very much. I hope you all have a cracking week. Don't forget, tomorrow, special show that nobody knew about, all about Chelsea. Fans on Friday. The men's channel will be back on Friday, as well as we review what's going on with the Real Betis game. And just as a reminder, would you look at that? We're only top of the league, and that is way better than it was before. See you next time.